Students, this is going to be the first video for the September 20th remote class. The entire purpose of tonight's class is really making our first steps into true analytics in both ArcPro and desktop. We've spent the last 4 weeks or so kind of building up to this. We've spent a lot of time learning about data structures, how you clean and organize data, how you visualize it, how you create new data, how you edit it. Last week we dipped our toe into analysis for the first time with selections, which we will likely return to once or twice this week. But now it's actually time to really break open the toolbox in ArcGIS and start looking at some of the more important or commonly used vector-based tools that you'll encounter while performing analytics in ArcGIS. Just to quickly show you something that I'll return to in a moment, there are a ton of tools in ArcGIS spread across a variety of toolboxes, some of which we don't even have access to. A lot of what we're going to do today and next week really is within these two toolboxes here, the analysis tools and the data management tools. Have most of sort of the kind of common and most useful tools. But I would encourage everybody who finds today's lesson interesting and fascinating just to continue to play around with tools we don't cover. We're really going to take care of an important cross-section today, but we're going to be leaving behind dozens of tools that simply aren't necessarily relevant for this course or that I may not even know about. And so it's always good practice as you begin to play around with the software internally that you are taking time to sort of test out and heuristically try some tools. So in Pro, when we want to get to tools, you would go to the analysis toolbar here. They've got it broken down for you as such over here. Model Builder in Python, we're not really going to get to yet. That's more of kind of the customization of elements. Ready to use tools are sort of ArcGIS Online hosted tools. We're not going to play with too many of them today, but typically the ones I would use, or you might use more commonly, are sort of these network analysis ones. Now, network analysis is not a tool we're going to learn in this class. If you want to learn more about it, we do a pretty big lecture on it in the GIS for urban planning and real estate development course. But it's really tools that allow you to use road and other networks to measure distance, to calculate how you get from point A to point B, to calculate a walk shed, sort of emulating what you might see when you use Google Maps if you find directions. It's a pretty common reason you might use ready-to-use tools. I would caution you against this, again, because these will use credits, and I'm not sure what the ability you have to use credits through Jefferson might be. These here are just going to go gray the moment you touch them. This is if you have, I think, ArcGIS Enterprise Server. Later on, we'll pop into some of these sort of raster tools, but for now, you're really going to be focused, either here, which are what I'd call a lot of the commonly used tools. Most of the ones we're going to play with are here anyway. Or you're actually going to be in the toolbox itself. When you click on that, under toolboxes is going to have all the ones that we're going to flow through. If you were in desktop, not as obviously user-friendly, but you could pop up here to the Arc Toolbox, and you'd be in roughly the same thing with roughly kind of the same orientation of tools. Before we get started on our first one, just one more thing I want to cover here, and that's Geoprocessing Options and Environments. So you have fewer here. If I were to click on this, and I'll see Geoprocessing Options. I don't really have much here. This is a good one to have clicked. I call this the 2 a.m. I'm doing work and I keep running the same thing over and over again. You may just want it to save over what you did before because what you did before is not relevant. If you don't have it clicked, it won't let you save over old copies. So it's just good to sort of have that kept on. Always also good to have logging on. That just means you can quickly check on a log history of what went wrong or what went right with a certain tool. Other thing is anytime you run tools, you have the ability to play with your environments too. And those are sort of like the behind the scenes conditions that govern the outputs of certain tools. Now, we may not play with too many of these now. This is certainly going to become much bigger when we get to rasters. But just so you have a complete understanding of what's available here, workspace is where things save, right? And I'll show you how to do this in desktop in a second too. But if you've ever noticed in the past when you've run any kind of tool, it sort of just picks a place to save it for you without your input. Well, that's because you have the Scratch workspace set to something automatically. But you can change it. If you have a folder you know you want things always to go, I mean, I don't right now, but you know, if I had something on desktop that was called like output or whatever, you know, I could click that and then it would make sure that anything saves right to that folder. But for now, I'll just leave it as is. You can also choose the coordinate system of the output. If you don't touch this, it just defaults to whatever the input is, which is usually a good bet. But you know, if you want to make sure that everything comes out projected in a coordinate system, you could just go to that and you know, choose the coordinate system that you want. The final one that's important to mention is processing extent. Think about that literally like a window framing. You know, if you don't do anything, all of the data you input is going to get analyzed, clipped, buffered, whatever. But if you set a processing extent, it's almost like you're putting a window over part of your data, and you'll only process that part. So we're talking about it in the abstract now, but this is going to actually be pretty important when we get to our raster lectures, so I'm going to hold off on that. In ArcMap, prime difference, geoprocessing environments right here. A little bit different structure, but the same thing, right? Workspace, your coordinate system for the output, your processing extent. The same things are here. Only other option here in this is you have what's called an options toolbar. It's a little bit more in depth. You know, primarily what I actually think is the neater one to click on here is this overwrite. I think it's just helpful when you're running desktop. Having this turned on will obviate desktop crashing on you a lot. So it's always a good thing to open that and just sort of turn that on. All right, so that's our kind of basic layout with tools. So let's start with a map. I inserted a map in Pro, and I'm going to come to right here, and I'm going to call it Clip and Erase. And I want you to, on your screen, call it Clip and Erase with your name. So that way when you take screenshots or export for me later, I'm able to see that you, were successfully able to accomplish these tasks. So if you go to the data for today, the folder for you, I think will say September 20th. This is being pulled from last year. We're going to be spending most of these videos on the demonstrating tools geodatabase. So the first thing would be to bring in Clip and Erase. Bring in inside, and then bring in outside. So these aren't much more than shapes. I'm going to drag inside on top. I'm going to pull it back and kind of show you, one of each. So the best way I think about Clip and Erase is pretend you're back in arts and crafts class, and your teacher has you put your hand on a piece of paper and cut it out. And when you do that, you're going to be left with two things. You're going to be left with the shape of your hand, and then you're going to be left with the rest of the paper with sort of a hole that is shaped like your hand in the middle. That's Clip and that's Erase. They're the same tool, it's just a different part of the paper that you take with you. Clip, you take the hand. Erase, you take the remaining paper. So let's see kind of how that looks. So if I go to Analysis, Clip is right here if you wanted to access it. You can also go to Tools and search for it. But if you want to build your muscle memory, Clip is in Analysis, Extract, Clip. Double click it, the tool window will come up here. Clip's going to want a few things. Input features is essentially what you want to clip from. I want to clip from outside. Clip features is the hand, right? It's the shape you want to clip out. I want to clip out the inside. I want to clip out this circle-like shape right here. And then this is simply what the name of the kind of output is, you know. So I'll go in and I'll maybe name it, you know, clip example. And I'll hit run. And what's going to come back is just a new shape that looks like it's thin line here. ArcGIS, in its tradition, always picks the worst symbologies. Just give me a minute here. I'll make it kind of green so you can see. There you go. It doesn't necessarily look like much happened, but what occurred was it took outside, it clipped the shape inside, and it brought back clip example. Now I can look at the attribute tables to sort of be certain here. And it's important that you do that, right? Because if I open outside, right, I can see we have our outside attributes and we have our clip example attributes. It simply brings back anything from the outside data and anything from clip. One thing I do want to point out that's really critical here, notice how these values are the same. Well, that's actually the area of the outside thing. When you clip something, it doesn't automatically recalculate the new area. And that's really important, right? If I want to do, I would have to right-click here. Well, I can't do it on this one, but I'd have to pick another one and actually kind of calculate the geometry of it, because what you don't want to happen is you don't want to create a situation where you clip something, you know, and it comes back bigger than, or reporting itself bigger than it actually is. So clipping is purely geometric. It doesn't like manipulate the attributes. It simply brings whatever attributes the original file had. So now let's look at erase and kind of see the difference there. Erase is under overlay, but again, you could also just search it. So the input features here is outside. Input's what I want to return. So I want to return this sort of pinkish area. And I want to return the part of the pinkish area. I want to essentially erase from it that circle. I want to cut out that circle there. And I'll call, you know, this one maybe erase example. And then I'll come here. And I'll run it. And you know, it's going to come back kind of the same general color here, so I'll just make it orange so it's easier to see. Turn that off, remove inside, and you can see what I've done. I've actually kind of clipped out the middle of it here and created a totally new shape. Totally geometric though, right? Again, if I open the attributes, they are identical. It's just bringing over the values 88460, 475. Right, it doesn't recalculate any of it. That would be the same with any kind of attributes that came from the outside area. So just remember, this is a geometric tool. It has nothing to do with attributes. Things are roughly the same here in desktop. You know, inside, outside, you drag them in. Maybe give their shapes a little bit easier to see here. Zoom out a bit. Same thing, you'll find these under your toolbox. Same pathways, analysis, extract clip, overlay. Again, tools look slightly different, but they require the same inputs. The tools don't shift between Pro and desktop, even if they look a little different. I want the outside. I want to erase the inside. You can hit OK. And it'll come back looking just like it did previously. Okay, so to demonstrate this, that you've walked through the video, I want you either in Pro or desktop, your choice, to run the clip and the erase, and take me a screenshot, you know, of the erase. It can just be something like this that shows the background map, you know, shows your table of contents, and then shows the thing that you clipped out. Just take a screenshot, you know, and put it in a PowerPoint presentation or something that lets me know, okay, I've watched the first video. And then we'll move on to the next one.